Hi guys, Billy here. Just I had a couple requests from people on the YouTube channel to show a Skull Warrior deck that I was running during the live stream I did when I faced the Demon Lord deck with my friend. And I've had a couple requests to know the build of my deck, so I figured show you a video. I haven't done one yet, and let you guys see how I've had it built. So we'll start off with the buddy and the flag. Obviously, Katana World, the only choice that you can really do. I got my nice Jin flag here. But then we have the buddy here, who is companion Katana of Magatsu, Yami Gitsune. And his ability is Blue Fire, Corpse Fire. When a Skull Warrior on your field deals damage, you may destroy that card. If you do, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discards it. He's obviously the whole point of the deck is to cripple your opponent's strategy and let you do what you need to, because you can just recover your own monsters with very minimal effort, usually with just one gauge. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll put that off to the side for the moment. And so the first thing will be obviously for companion Katana of Magatsu, Yami Gitsune's. Obviously, you'll just want 4. It's buddy. It's the whole point of the deck. And obviously, you can resurrect it with Return to the Underworld, and for without paying the call cost of 1 gauge for him. Sort of the whole point of Return to the Underworld. So pretty straightforward. Not much to talk about there. Next is for Demon Kid Hienmaru's. He's a 6/2/1. When he's called from the drop, you put the top card of your deck into your gauge, and he's not once per turn. That's why I run him at 4. You could honestly probably even run him as buddy. Gain a gauge and a life the first time you call him, and then obviously just a gauge afterwards. And then at the end of the turn, he kills himself. So pretty standard Skull Warrior. Really needed for any Skull Warrior deck, just because Return to the Underworld eats your gauge like a madman. So to be able to call a monster for literally free, and he has good stats, nothing's wasted on him. That's 6,000 to 1,000 defenses. Obviously the minimum amount you can have in a monster, so pretty straightforward. The next one is, if I can grab them here, Godly Speed Natsubame's. I run 3 in the deck. He's a 4/2/1. His named ability is Sandy Sprint. When he enters the field, from your drop zone, if you have another Skull Warrior on the field, just draw a card. And Sandy Sprint only activates once per turn, and then he dies at the end of the turn. He is, you got to be careful with this card, because it is a named ability that's only once per turn. Doesn't mean you can keep recalling them and keep drawing. And obviously, if you call him first from the drop zone, and then if you go to call another one, this actually is already activated when you called the first one. Even though it didn't go off and you didn't draw, the ability still activates, because it activates when he enters from the drop zone. So you never want to call him first. What you can do, though, is you can call him, which I'll show later, but there is a way where you can call him first and then still draw, but we'll get there once we get there. But just keep that in mind. It's only once per turn. Even if he's called from the drop and he's the first thing that's called, it still activates. Next is 2 Blood Knife Keeman Size. He's a 4/2/1. He dies at the end of the turn, and he has Penetrate for free. I only run 2 because not every deck is closed center. And a lot of closed center decks have, like Athera has it where you can't even deal them effect damage, which is, in my opinion, stupid, but whatever. So yeah, he's very minimally used. He's better for smaller monsters that your opponent has a closed center for. But because of the Penetrate, that's still a Skull Warrior dealing effect damage. It's effect damage, but it's still damage from a Skull Warrior. So then your buddy Yami can destroy him, and then your opponent discards a card. So if everything goes off correctly, you get to deal 2 damage, destroy their monster, and they discard a card, which is quite a bit for basically just a free monster that dies anyway. So pretty good. Not good in every situation, but it's one of those things where it's like if you get your opponent stuck in a tough spot and they start calling monsters to the center to cover their life points, you can sort of surprise them with Keemansai. So that's why I run him at 2, because usually he's more of a late game card. And even if early game you don't see it and you just fight against a close center weenie deck like Magic World or like Death, something from Darkness Dragon World, he can still, it's usually not a big deal if you don't see him in those kind of situations. So the next card is 3 Snake Princess Setsunas. She's a 3/1/1, which is a little but when she enters the field, you can pay a gauge, and if you do, call size 1 or less Skull Warrior from your drop zone by paying its call cost, and then she self-destructs at the end of the turn. So the thing that's unfortunate about her, which Bushiroad is going to be printing a better version of her essentially, but the unfortunate thing is you have to select the card you're going to resurrect back with her before you pay the gauge. I know it's sort of not worded that way, but that's just how effects tend to work. Unless they're like in a separate bullet, then you have to choose what you're calling back first before you pay the 1 gauge to call it back. So the main obviously the main 2 cards that are meant to be called back are Demon Kid and Natsubame, because he can be called back for free because you get the gauge back, and then Natsubame you can draw off of him. So really solid way to get 2 monsters on the field while still keeping hand advantage. Also, so this is where I was talking about, where you can actually, if you need to and you're sort of in a tight spot, because he needs to be in the drop zone, Natsubame needs to be in the drop zone before Setsuna can resurrect him. What you can actually do is call Natsubame to the field. The ability doesn't activate because it only activates when it enters from the drop zone. So then you can actually call over, it goes to the discard pile, her ability activates, pay a gauge, bring it back, draw a card. So little strategy like that, but there's going to be a new Skull Warrior coming out in the Evolution and Mutation set, along with a really good weapon for them. But the evil pupil arts Yami Gitsune, where it's basically her, but he's a 5/2/1, like the stats of Companion Katana Magatsu, but his call cost is a gauge, which means that then whatever that gauge was, you could actually bring that back because paying the gauge is first, and then the ability activates, so it's already in the drop for you to grab. So unfortunately, Setsuna is probably not going to be used too much longer, but I mean, she's still not a bad card. I know there's sort of a bad rep of her, but calling 2 monsters for free is really good, and she's better for another purpose later on, which I'll explain. But the next card is her, a lot of people think counterpart, and in some ways he is, but in other ways he's not. Oh, excuse me. But Undying Benny Shoujo. So he's a 5/2/1. I run 3 of these. Act, so that means you only use it during the main phase. If this card is in the drop zone, you can pay a gauge. If you do, call it from the drop zone, and then at the end of the turn, it dies. So he's really good. He even works in. I know he has better stats than Setsuna, but he's still. They're both really good. I really can't say just stick with one. They sort of both help keep the deck running, even if you don't have like a Return to the Underworld. But Benny Shoujo is nice because even if your opponents were running like stars and they have like Great Fate Frozen Star on the field, you can actually call him from the drop because the drop's not on the field. And then actually his ability is nullified of self-destruction. So you could just call him to the center, use him as center cover, so your opponent has to deal with him, and then just during your own turn, just bring him back. He's really good. Obviously, he's really good in just a tight spot if you have like a lot of gauge and you just need to get like, if you know a certain card in your gauge is needs to be put into the drop and you want to call it later, he's a good choice as well if he's already in the drop. So, yeah, good card. I wouldn't run 4. I mean, I've ran 4. I've had him as buddy. But the problem is he eats so much gauge up when there's 4 of them that you just don't tend to have other plays. So the next card, which is probably a little unexpected, but I guess I'll explain it in a little bit once I get to it, is I run 3 Treasury Jackie Kurosus. So he's a 4/2/1, pay a gauge to move. And the move to gauge is basically equivalent. So you're not really losing anything by paying a gauge to call him. And plus, when you call him back from the drop zone with Return to the Underworld, you don't have to pay his call cost. So he's just, in my opinion, I like him more than Diversion Troublemaker Bakimujina. He's the 1/2/2 that's free, that moves, but I hate that 2,000 defense, and the 1,000 is abysmal for attack. So I prefer the 4,000. It just hits more things. But yeah, so he's good, and there's a reason why I run him, but essentially he has move, and I'll explain it in a second. But first off, we'll go to the impact monster of the deck. Yami Gitsune, White Fire, Shigai Soshi. And if I can get this to focus, there we go. So he's a 6/2/3. Call cost is 2 gauge and destroy a Skull Warrior on my field. When he enters the field during the final phase, stand a Skull Warrior on the field, obviously other than him because he comes in stood. And for this turn, it can attack during the final phase. And then it has 2 darkness of the old Evil in Heart Yami Gitsune of when a Skull Warrior deals damage to your opponent, you can put that card to the drop, and if you do, draw a card. Keep in mind that this is destruction, or this is put. This card puts this ability puts the Skull Warrior to the drop. Where Companion Katana Magatsu Yami Gitsune says you can destroy it. And that actually matters because there's some cards like Demon Way Geppakugiri and Demon Way Arakuyo that, even though obviously the same thing is done where the card is put to the drop zone, whether it's destroyed or put, only certain things proc. So if something's put to the drop zone, it's not destroyed. So you can't activate things that are based off of destroy. But the field for this card is actually a little interesting. I'll show it in a little bit here once I get through all the rest of the cards. But it's pretty much the best impact for Skull Warriors right now. I wish I could say that Demon Way, what the hell is the one called? The original one. Karakuranai was a good impact. And in this deck, in theory, it is. But I've tried it, and it's just, every time I see it, I just think, damn, I wish this card, this Yami, was in the drop and I could just call it back, because with Return to the Underworld, you don't have to pay the 2 gauge and destroy a Skull Warrior to call him back, because it's without paying the call cost, which we'll get to in a minute. We'll show Return to the Underworld. And obviously with Setsuna, you don't want to call him back with Setsuna, because with Setsuna, you have to pay the call cost. So the point is not to call him back. It'd be a lot of waste to just call him back for that. But the point of that card is to try to cinch it, and if you are having a hard time seeing the Companion Katana Magatsu Yami Gitsune, at least you can draw with 2 darkness to try to get to where you need to go. So the next thing I'm running, which may be a little unexpected, but I don't think it's really unexpected anymore, is Ninja Blade Chiri Sakura. It's a 2000 attack, 2 crit item. And it's a counteract. During my attack phase, destroy a monster on my field, and if you do, this item gets plus 5,000 power. And this is not once per turn. It can be done as many monsters as you have on the field. So the great thing is most, if not all, the Skull Warriors pretty much kill themselves anyways at the end of the turn. So you can actually get an extra swing in by calling a Skull Warrior that self-destructs, like, Demon Kid Hienmaru or Undying Benny Shoujo or Snake Princess Setsuna. Destroy them and then swing with the item, and it might get you the game. And plus, it gets plus 5,000 power. So it starts at 2,000. You can destroy one monster. It's up to 7,000, which is amazing. Just for literally destroying a monster that already kills itself. And you can always you can always destroy a second monster if you need to get up to 12,000, which is good to kill like Second Omni Lord, Asmodai, or other high defense monsters. So yeah, good card is good. And it's also destroy. So things that proc with destruction, like I said, Double Loss, Geppakugiri, Arakuyo, things like that. This actually procs off of, those cards proc off of Ninja Blade Chiri Sakura. So I run 4 because it's the only weapon, and in order to get the full field and lethality going, you got to get the weapon. So next is for Return to the Underworld. Pretty standard. All the Skull Warriors are size 1s, and so this is a set spell, which means it stays on the field after you play it, and it's act. You may pay a gauge. If you do, call size 1 or less Skull Warrior from your drop zone without paying its call cost. And then you can only use it once per turn, but the once per turn is per card, so you can have like 2 of the set spells on the field and do it for each of them. It's not like a named ability or says, you only have 1 of the set spells on the field. So the whole point is to, pay a gauge, call back your field, swing. So kind of the whole, so I guess we'll get to the whole point of the field is you have the item equipped. Let's say you have Jackie Kurosu over on the side. And the other 2 monsters can really vary. For, I guess, this example, we can do Demon Kid and Setsuna for an example. And so you can, in one situation, swing with this, swing, destroy, destroy. It can be 12,000, or if you want to keep it on the field here, swing. And then if you have the impact Yami, you can always destroy Setsuna during the final phase. Call, stand Jackie Kurosu back up, and you get an extra 2/2. And then the nice thing is, because Jackie has move, is it can cover your center still. And so you get multiple more attacks than you would normally with a closed center, just a normal closed center field like this, than this. And so it adds some more lethality, and it gives you some power that Skull Warriors sort of struggled to hit before with the Ninja Blade. Because Skull Warriors always seem to struggle hitting 7,000 or more, which is actually good numbers for a monster. So because this can hit 7, 12,000, it can reach those higher numbers that they might struggle. So you can always, worst case scenario, you can always, if need be, length this for, let's say 9,000. And then, if you want to get, and let's say they nullify that swing or something on a monster, you can just be like, okay, destroy these two, swing for 12,000. Then you get another chance. And you didn't even lose anything because they die anyways. So it's just, really good plussing there. And then obviously during your opponent's turn, and you can sort of determine, if your opponent has penetrate, don't move. But then if they don't have anything special, just call Jackie Kurosu to the center because, oh, hey, look, you can just call it back with Return to the Underworld. And it's just sort of like another nullify. So that's kind of the idea of the field. But yeah, we'll get to the rest of the shields here. So give those a second. The next is Demon Way or Bodo Genbu. You can only cast it during an attack on your opponent's turn, and if you don't have a monster in the center, you just nullify the attack. Obviously, the deck is going to be pretty much open center, and I know you can have Jackie Kurosu in the center, but at least you get a choice before the battle phase starts of whether you actually want to move Jackie Kurosu to the center or not. So if they have penetrate or something, just don't call them to the center, and then just nullify things here, and you still have a monster on the side that they might want to swing at and deal with if it's a monster that they can't deal with next turn. I don't run Art of Body Replacement, and actually the other kind of pseudo nullify, it's not necessarily nullify, but the other nullified quote unquote is Ninja Art Snake Gaze, where you pay a life and you rest a monster on your opponent's field. Right now with bots being a thing and double, triple attackers and other godly amounts of stupidity, like even Jaeger Dynamite. Snake Gaze can really save your bucket for, or save your shit. I don't know where you'd save your bucket. I guess you'd kick your bucket, but Jaeger, Jaeger bots, any of those pain in the ass cards, even if you could run Art of Body Replacement, but that only covers one swing. Where Snake Gaze, it just stops the whole swing from even happening for one life, which. The whole point of the nullify is to save your life, but it's funny because you actually kind of save more life if you use that one life on Snake Gaze. So, quite good. The next card is Clear Serenity. It's a Demon Way Ninja Arts spell, and it's just counter, put the top 3 cards of your deck into your gauge, and you can cast it only once per turn, which is not a big deal. I honestly, at a lot of times, run this at 4. A lot of times with cards that say they can only be casted once per turn, you want to run 3, maybe 2, but usually 3 is sort of the magic number. Only because if you play it once, it's sort of a dead card if you draw it again. Well, what you do with Clear Serenity, and why you can run it at 4, I have it at 3 or 4, it doesn't really matter, is it's a counter. So you can, if you know your opponent has a nullify, like Garble Anchor in the Soul of something, you can actually play this when your opponent decides to play a spell or call a monster and counter and play it. Because counter chains in this game can only go up to 2 cards in a chain. So if your opponent's playing a monster and then you can counter and play this whenever, counter play this when they go to call the monster or play the spell, and they can't counter and use Garble Anchor's ability, or any other kind of nullify if the deck would have. Not that nullifies are generally used, but Star Dragon World tends to be the one that uses nullifies. And they can't nullify it. So it's just a definite 3 gauge, which is not bad. And in worst case scenario, if you do have 2 and you really want all that gauge, you can, at the end of your opponent's turn, you just be like, I play Clear Serenity, and then just during your turn, just play Clear Serenity, because it's once per turn, so it's you can still play it during your opponent's turn, and it's still, when it hits your turn, that's not the once per turn. So, yeah, Clear Serenity, real good. And the reason why I run Clear Serenity at the moment at 3, and I don't know, I feel like I run a couple cards a little lower than I should, but they're pretty much all 3, which is probably about standard, is because of Demon Way Arakuyo, here I was mentioning before. So you can only cast if 2 or more Skull Warriors on your field were destroyed during 1 turn. Pay a gauge, draw 3. This card is so stupid. I love I love it. just, especially since it's sort of, you can inflict it upon yourself of the destroy 2 Skull Warriors. Like, it's nice if your opponent like plays a Death Grip or something that like even might be a board wipe, like a Wrath of Odin. Like, that does suck if that does happen. But this is a great card to recover back from, because your opponent just wasted cards to board wipe you when you can just call your field back next turn. And then on top of that, you draw 3 cards and probably draw into nullifies to stop your opponent's turn. It's just a really good way for Skull Warriors to keep going. And also, great thing with that card is... I need to grab a couple self-destructing Skull Warriors here. 1 second. I guess we'll do this little combo that I like to do turn 0 or turn 1, however you like to, the turn where you only attack once. One thing that I like to do that's common is, if it's my first turn, I'll call Natsubame, call over him with Setsuna, pay a gauge, call him back, draw a card off of Natsubame, swing with Natsubame for turn 1. Then you can actually play a Rakuyo off of Skull Warrior self-destructing at the end of the turn. So when these 2 die at the end of the turn, you can actually just counter and just say, I draw 3. It's still your turn, and you still have counter timings, because, I mean, it's your turn. So even if they self-destruct, you're literally just getting Skull Warriors put to the drop zone, which to bring back later. You got to draw off of Natsubame, and then you draw 3 more with this bad boy. So, really good card. I just run it 4 just because it's so easy. There's not... Without Evil and Heart Yami Kitsune in the deck, you got to sort of rely on other means while still trying to make your opponent discard cards with this. So it's really good. And so then the last 2 cards of the deck are Demon Way Sakura Fubuki, which is... if I can get it to focus here, holy crap. Wow. There we go. Pay 2 life. Cast cost. Pay 2 life. You only cast it when your opponent casts a spell. Counter, nullify the spell. And so nullify cards do not enter the field. Effects from them do not resolve, and the card just goes to the drop zone. It's just a stop what you're doing, and you're just gonna, deal with it. But this card is great because obviously, as the picture sort of implies, is really good with like playing Blood Knife Kimensai and penetrating your opponent. Your opponent tries to stop Kimensai from penetrating their center of monster, and you're just like, no, it goes through. And then, Kimensai dealt damage, so then, you discard another card with Yami. One other thing that's really common to do is if you have, let's say the optimal board. So we'll say Companion Katana. We'll say Demon Kid for the center. Jeki Kurosu to the side. And the Ninja Blade. You can actually, this really hurts, and it's sort of unexpected, but it really hurts, because, most decks tend to use an open center nullify, which is usually the better shield, because then it makes your opponent have to send the attacks in packets instead of link attacking and, getting over, an Art of Body replacement clone. So one common thing to do, and you don't even need to have this, you could even have, another self-destructing Skull Warrior, if you don't have this, just, Natsubame on the side here. Either way, doesn't matter. But you just go, I triple link, right? And if your opponent has a shield, they're more than likely going to be like, well, I gotta freaking shield this, But then you're just like, I pay 2 life, and you stop the shield, and any cast cost that they had to pay for the shield, so Arc Dragon Shield, they have to pay the gauge for, or any other kind of cast cost. Most of the shields tend to be free in this game, but that's not the whole point. The point is, you stop them from doing this. This is 6 damage, which is more than half of their life in one swing that they can't re-counter another nullify for. Because that's the chain, is they played a spell, and then you played a spell, and that's done. That's all there is to the chains in this game. So... this is sort of final, and so they eat. Not only does the card they use get wasted, but then you destroy. I would honestly just destroy all 3 of these with Companion Katana's ability, and they have to discard 3 cards, and that really bungles strategies. I'm sure people rely on having certain cards in their hand to have a strategy, and if they're at 6 life or less, and you just have this field, or even without Companion Katana Magatsu, just just, another Skull Warrior, even Setsuna, or just Jackie Kurosu. It doesn't matter. But if they're at, 5 or 6 life, and you have Sakura Fubuki in your hand with 2 life to spare, just be like, I triple Link, or, with Setsuna or without Jackie Kurosu. And they try to nullify it, and you're just like, eat this, and I win. They literally can't do anything about it. And it's sort of unexpected, and decks aren't really prepared for that. In this meta, it's more of walls and just people with shields just ready to stop, the bigger attacks in a turn. And I mean, to put the icing in the cake, if you like somehow got rid of their whole field and you just need that extra 2 damage, just, destroy this and just swing for 2 more. I mean, yeah, they have another chance to shield this attack, but if you made them discard a bunch of cards with Yami on the field, then more than likely they probably don't have a shield, and they can just go eat all that damage. Pretty straightforward. It's pretty aggressive. Sometimes you don't see Sakura Fubukis. You might be able to run them at 3. I guess you could run them at 3. I guess when I run it at 3, I see it too many times, and it's just sort of a dead card. Sakura Fubuki sort of, you got to know when to play it. It's not a card that just because you have it means you have to play it. My God, if this thing can focus at all. There we go. It's not a card that has to be played. I've had plenty of games where it's just literally not worth it to nullify a spell, and then I just charge away Sakura Fubuki. It's just sometimes not worth it. And actually, I'm going to go over the sideboard as well, just because it's only, it's 10 cards, but it's just 3 different cards. So I figured just might as well go over it. And obviously, depending on the meta and everything, your sideboards can change. But the first card is 4 Ninja Art half kills. And actually, I feel like this card and another card I'm going to mention are probably going to be replaced. But eventually, when the Dungeon and Hero set come out. But Ninja Art's half kill says you can only cast it when an opponent's monster with Soul Guard is attacking. Counter, nullify the attack, and just remove all souls of the attacking monster and send them to the drop zone. Really good card, because a lot of the cards these days just say they can't be destroyed by effects, but a lot of, most of them, you can still remove their souls if they do have souls. A lot of times, if they just can't be destroyed by effects, then they don't have soul, but like Athera, you can try to remove its souls. I know if you have like Mystic Setting in it, then you can't remove that, but hey, if you can get rid of a couple souls, or even just 1 soul, like that's good. Also, this actually can proc if your opponent tries to be a cheeky bastard and tries to do a link attack with a monster with Soul Guard, even if not all the monsters in the attack have Soul Guard, as long as one of them has Soul Guard, it doesn't even need to have Soul, but as long as it's Soul Guard, you can actually stop the whole attack with this. It doesn't say anything about it has to be a single attack from a Soul Guard monster. It's just, if it's attacking, you can just nullify, whether it's a link attack or not. Really good card. You could probably even run maybe 2 of these in the main board if you wanted to, but later on in the future, I feel like this card's going to sort of be obsolete for Skull Warriors. And I'll explain why in a little bit. The next card is Double Loss. Really good card. It's sort of like an upgraded Geppuku Giri, but not at the same time. It's a dual Katana World, Dragon World card, and it says you only cast it when a monster on your field is destroyed, which, hey, that's all the freaking time with Skull Warriors. Pay a gauge. Put a soul from a monster on your opponent's field into his or her drop zone and destroy that card. So you can actually play this without the monster you want to destroy having a soul. That's just icing on the cake. And that's honestly where this card actually can be better or worse than Demon Way Geppuku Giri. If the monster you want to destroy doesn't have a soul, this is actually worse because you got to pay the gauge along with playing this card, where Geppuku Giri would just be free. But in this meta and in most decks, they tend to try to run at least 1 soul monsters, like even Cosmo Dragoons, the monsters tend to have just like 1 soul in them. So you can just be like, have Jackie Kurosu in the center. When he dies, just double loss the, Bradbury or any other, I'm not super familiar with the Cosmo Dragoons, but I know Bradbury can have a soul. Any other Cosmo Dragoons or any monster that has, 1 soul in it. A lot of heroes tend to have 1 soul monsters. So it's really good. It's basically, at the moment, I consider it a better Demon Way Geppuku Giri. But the reason why I'm going to eventually actually side out half kill and double loss is because of a dual world, Katana world, Dungeon world card. It's called Jester Dark Fox. And it's a Yami. It's a Yami like this. I mean, obviously not this card exactly, but it's a dual world card, and it's a pay gauge. It's a 6,000 to 1,000 monster. And it says, after a Skull Warrior Adventure attacks, you can choose a monster on your opponent's field, and destroy a Skull Warrior or Adventurer on your field. And if you do, you can actually remove a soul and destroy a monster on your opponent's field. So that's going to be really powerful, and I feel like it's going to sort of kill two sideboard cards with one stone while still being a main board card. It'll basically be these two cards sort of combined, not necessarily so much half kill, but it's more of the soul removal kind of aspect of half kill that it'll replace. But it'll be a built-in double loss, and it'll be destroy as well, so you can still proc Demon Way or Akuyo and still draw 3 cards, even if you destroy 2 monsters. And then the last card, which is sort of a common staple at this point because there's a lot of good items and there's still Dragon Force around, is Barbed Wire, which is a generic card, which is why it's sort of a more oddly just geared card. But it's counter rests an item on your opponent's field. So if your opponent's item has, double attack or a lot of crit, but if it's a really strong item, you can just play this and get rid of it. So that's the deck. And yeah, have a great day.